Θα ξεκινήσουμε με πρώτη παρουσίαση του Jeff Bridgeford με αντικείμενο η μαθητεία στην Ευρώπη πρόσφατες εξελίξεις. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Good afternoon. I can't speak Greek, so I'm going to speak in English. So those of you who need your headphones will have to get a bit organised. And I'm going to have some PowerPoint presentation, so you over there have got no chance of seeing my PowerPoint presentation. Well, there's a TV monitor there. Oh, there's a TV monitor there. Oh, excuse me. Oh, you'll have no trouble. My God. So, I'm going to just have a little presentation about apprenticeships in Europe. And to put the context, your Greek discussions into a broader context. And some of the problems that were discussed this morning are ones that we can find quite easily in many other countries in Europe. Some have got solutions and some don't have solutions. So it's an interesting debate that goes beyond the borders of one particular country, because we're all starting to try and understand a little bit better what's going on as far as apprenticeships are concerned. I'm going to talk about 4 different elements, quickly. So, what's the starting point? Well, the starting point is extraordinarily dismal. That is to say that youth unemployment in the EU, the figures for last year, is 22%. And unfortunately, when you start look, that's an average. And when you start looking at the individual countries, well, you can see it on the PowerPoint slide, they are extremely disappointing for some countries. But not all. You can see there that in other countries, there is a low level of youth unemployment. It is a coincidence that in Germany, Austria, Denmark and the Netherlands, they have a very well-respected and well-functioning apprenticeship system. But be careful. You can have the best apprenticeship system in the world, but if you've got no jobs, you've got no jobs. And that's one thing that's got to be remembered. And the other thing is, Ireland has a very, very good apprenticeship system, but it's got also very high youth unemployment. So this isn't a golden rule at all. I hate to say this, but I've heard the expression, a lost generation. And I think that is absolutely scandalous, that we are saying that what are we going to do with 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds? They're not finding work. Where are they going to do? What's going to happen to them? How are they ever going to integrate into society? And there's a very serious debate, which is much greater than the debate we're having this afternoon. But what will happen to these people as they get older and as they move through society? Because we know that once you're out of employment, getting back into employment is an extremely difficult task. So apprenticeships can't solve the problem of youth unemployment, but they can ease the transition from school to the world of work. Now, I've just been involved, in fact, I was here in the summer in Greece. Nikos organised lots of interviews for me, and I was able to get a better understanding of the situation here in Greece. And that's part of a bigger project that I'm doing on behalf of the European Trade Union Confederation. And I'm looking at apprenticeship schemes in 20 different countries. And what have I noticed? Well, I've been to 19 countries so far. And the first thing I've noticed is that there is an enormous amount of activity. Everyone is starting to look at the question of apprenticeships. Governments, I won't say they're panicking, but they certainly feel that they need to do something to solve the problem of youth unemployment. They need to be seen to be doing something. And there's a lot of activity taking place. There's new laws in Spain, new laws in Italy. There was a new amendment to law in France in 2014. There's new strategies being put forward. The Germans and the Danes, who have excellent apprenticeship systems, have just put forward a new alliance in Germany, a new plan in Denmark to improve their systems. Even the English have decided that they need to improve their apprenticeship system, and it's absolutely certain that they do need to improve their apprenticeship system. The French have just had a very big conference which was presided over by the President himself, who called on different actors to improve the apprenticeship system. There's just been a review in Ireland and a new system there. So there's a lot of things. These are just examples. A lot of things that are taking place. It's not only in Greece that there is a discussion on this particular subject. Some countries are talking about targets. We need to have so many apprentices by a certain time. It helps to concentrate targets, but it can also be counterproductive. The English have done this, the French have done it, even the Germans are saying, the German employers have said that they will add 20,000 to the numbers of apprenticeships that they will offer per year. And don't forget, German employers offer 500,000 apprenticeships per year, which is an absolutely staggering number. Many, 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 many more than you would find in England or in France. There's new initiatives. Everyone's talking about how is it going to be financed. England, of all places, is now coming up with a Conservative government, is coming up with a suggestion that there should be a tax on companies, and it should go towards apprenticeship schemes. Ireland is very interesting in another sense, because in most countries, or in many countries, apprenticeships have been dominated by young boys, young men, with very little opportunity for women to get involved. Ireland has always been like that. About 95% of apprentices have always been young boys, young men. And now they've set up 25 new different occupations for which apprenticeships can be used. And they are in other types of occupations where they consider there will be a better chance for young women to get involved. And this one is a very interesting one in France. They've just come up with this news proposal between employers and trade unions, saying that they need to have a specific education for in-company mentors. Every country has got a difficult task when it comes to welcoming apprentices into the workplace. Some countries have training schemes, some countries have nothing. And the French are very interesting and very inventive in terms of what they're proposing as an education, as a training for the so-called in-company mentors. At the European level, there was the same panic to a certain extent. A few years ago, when I first started looking at this question, the EU was not particularly interested in apprenticeships. Now it is. And you can see that as part of the youth guarantee, there should be a good quality offer of employment, continued education, an apprenticeship or a traineeship within a period of 4 months of becoming unemployed or leaving education. By the way, that's not how you spell the word becoming. It's just that I clearly haven't read it properly before I came and should have taken off that last N. There's also been a new proposal from the Council of the European Union, signed by all the countries of the European Union, and also the social partners, and that is to set up a European Alliance for Apprenticeships, to help improve the quality and supply of apprenticeships and to change mindsets towards work-based learning. This is a voluntary activity. Some countries are doing something, some countries are not doing something, some companies are doing something. One particular company, I'm sure you know, Nestle, has made this fantastic public relations exercise saying that they will set up 100,000 apprenticeships and traineeships throughout Europe. Now, I don't know whether they're going to do that or not, but it's a fantastic bit of marketing for their company, and I certainly hope that they will be doing that, and other companies are trying to get involved as well. On all my slides here, I've got a number of web addresses. I will give the slideshow to Nikos, and possibly it can be distributed so that if you want to get further information about these different elements, there's some websites that you can look at. Interestingly, and this is almost like a secret, no one seems to be wanting to talk about it, is that the European Union has concluded in one of its council meetings that there should be a certain number of guiding principles throughout the whole of the European Union, the 28 countries. And this comes back to the question, I'm looking over there but I don't see him anymore, when we're talking about quality assurance in the first half of the morning. How do you define quality assurance within the context of apprenticeships? It's not the same as a school-based course. It's not the same as a company-based course. It's a mixture. So how do we do it? And this is what they've come forward with. One, that there should be an appropriate regulatory framework. There are countries, and I can think of two, I won't name them, who've got extraordinarily confusing regulatory frameworks. There's one that has two laws. One that is run by the Ministry of Labour, and another that is run by the Ministry of Education, where they have two separate types of apprenticeships. And this is just a recipe for complete confusion. Another country came out with a law quite recently, and within that law there is the opportunity for school-based apprenticeships and work-based apprenticeships. Both of them actually administered by two different ministries. And there again, there is a very good opportunity for a high level of confusion. Another guiding principle, there should be national partnerships with social partners. And sometimes when I hear the word social partners, I often only hear the word employers, which is, of course, completely wrong. And we're talking about employers and trade union organisations. The apprenticeship scheme should be integrated into the formal education and training system. This is becoming, in a way, easier before. Before it was complicated. Now that we're starting to have, in most countries of the EU now, a qualifications framework, there is a better opportunity for a lot of vocational training to come out of, I would say, to come out of the shadows a little bit, and to be more visible. And in many countries, it's now integrated into the qualifications framework. So in theory, if you have a level 3 in a certain course, a qualification, in a certain country, that should, it doesn't always, but it should give you access to level 4, or the opportunity to start to study for level 4. This is a major opportunity, in fact, in terms of making vocational training and apprenticeship popular, and particularly with those parents of young people who say, I'm not sure that I want my child to go into an apprenticeship because this will be a dead end in terms of educational progression. I think there's an opportunity now for greater progression for young apprentices. Obviously, they say it should be high quality, and according to the themes of Equivet, I will come back onto that in a second. They say that there should be a strong work-based component. I would actually use the word a majority of work-based component. Funding should be equitable between employers and public authorities, and certainly not apprentices. There should be new sectors. This is what the Irish have done. New sectors, new occupation. This is a major problem, career guidance. Obviously, we heard this morning, I heard the figure that was then not agreed with, but the figure of 70% of non-completion. Now, I don't like the expression dropout rate. I think that's a very negative concept. But there are many good reasons why young people stop doing apprenticeships. One, because they were badly advised in the first place. Two, because they couldn't think of anything better to do. Three, because they perhaps like to try something different when they've realised they've made a terrible decision. And four, they might want to go and do other things. But clearly, they need career guidance. And I know it was a long time ago, but when I had career guidance myself, I wanted to be a footballer, but they said that I could become a policeman. Neither of which I've actually been able to do in my whole career. So there needs to be a much greater emphasis on career guidance. At the European level, there is something that's been set up that's called Equivet. All countries have signed up to it, so Greece included, and the idea is that it should guarantee the quality of vocational education and training. There are 10 indicators. I'm not going to go through all of them. Some of them I think are good, some of them are not so good, but completion rate and placement rate are interesting. One is to do with, do you complete? And we've had this discussion slightly this morning in terms of, do young people go to the end of their apprenticeship? And the answer is in many countries no. And the figure this morning, which was extraordinarily high, I can tell you that in Germany they have a very serious problem. Where's Henning? I don't know where he is, from Denmark. But I know in Denmark too there is a very high level of young people not completing their apprenticeships. So we have to relativize this figure. It's bad, and it's less bad in some countries, but it's still something that needs greater concern. And the question of placement rate, there was a lady this morning, she's not here now, I met her in the break, and we were talking about placement rate. Is it true that there is a greater chance of getting work once you've gone through an apprenticeship, if you compare it with a normal vocational training course? And the answer, unequivocally, I don't have figures for Greece. In fact, the colleague from the table here who replied was unable to provide that level of expertise. But I can say from other countries, there is no doubt at all that the young people who go through an apprenticeship have a much higher chance of getting work afterwards. For the very simple reason that they have learned things in their work-based learning that you just cannot learn in a school or in a vocational training institution. Discipline, working with others, learning to work on a project, work with others. There are many other things. And indeed for employers, an apprenticeship is like a long interview where you can see whether you like the person, whether they do the job properly, and whether you want to take them on afterwards. But when they evaluated Equivet a couple of years ago, or 18 months ago, they did say that measures are focused on institutional school-based provision with less visible impact on work-based learning, and they are trying to address that issue. But what I would say is they just can't look at school-based learning, you just can't look at work-based learning, because that is the special nature of an apprenticeship. It is a mixture of school-based and work-based learning. That is its strength. And if you just look at the one or just look at the other, you miss half the picture. But what the EU is extremely unhappy about doing is finding a definition. Now, Cedefop, as you know about from Thessaloniki, has put forward a definition. It's systematic, long-term training, alternating periods at the workplace and in a training centre. The apprentice is contractually linked to the employer and receives remuneration, and the employer assumes responsibility for providing the trainee with training, leading to a specific occupation. There is a problem with that for some people throughout the European Union, and I think the major problem is the word contractually linked. Employers in some countries do not want to sign contracts with young people for their educational purposes. I don't know why, I can't understand it personally, but they do in all the countries that have got the best apprenticeship systems. They think it's normal to sign a contractual arrangement with the young people. The only thing that I miss in this Cedefop definition is the word qualification. I think that's worth considering as well. Now, I worked for the European Trade Union Confederation for 20 years and have now gone back more or less into academic life. I have been asked, and this is what I'm doing at the moment, setting up a quality framework for apprenticeships throughout Europe. We've developed 21 quality standards. And the next part, and I will be doing that actually in the next few weeks, is to write criteria for each one of these quality standards by which the quality standard can be judged, and then I will be providing from my interviews examples of best practice from around Europe. There is the website of the previous publication that I was involved with, and what I'd like, I'm not going to go through them all because it's very similar to the ones from the European Union, but it's to do with definition, it's to do with regulatory framework, it means real employment, personal development. There are many things there: pay, social partnership, guidance, quality assurance procedures. Quality assurance is not just about the procedures that you have in an institution, it's about the overall package. I won't go through them all because they're very similar to the ones in the European Union, which in itself is very interesting. So there's the final ones. They need to be competence-based. There was a question this morning about certification. I'm actually convinced that we need some form of certification so that young people have got something in their hand that they can use afterwards, which is demonstration of the level of competence that they have, that they can use in their job and in future jobs as their career progresses. There was a mention this morning of recognition of non-formal and informal learning. For many countries this is very complicated and very new and very difficult to deal with. But clearly this is going to become a part of top quality apprenticeship systems, particularly as all the EU countries have signed up to a recommendation which means that by the year 2018, which isn't very long, far away, they will all have arrangements for the recognition of non-formal and informal learning. Now, those of you who have got a good understanding of the English language will know that there is probably no term more vague than the word arrangement. It doesn't mean much. But nevertheless, this is what they've been able to agree, and it'll be interesting to see what actually comes out of this in 2018. I'm finished with this. This is just a little, an example of how this framework will be built up. Here we'll have the themes, and I said we've got, this one is the regulatory framework. There is the quality standard, which we agreed in the previous project. Next to that, you'll see that there is a quality criteria. So does the regulatory framework specify the rights and responsibilities of employers and apprentices? And then what I will be doing when I write this report, I will integrate a certain number of examples of best practice. And as far as the law is concerned, the law in Luxembourg is extremely detailed about who should do what. There's a very interesting sectoral agreement in the metalworking industry in France explaining who should do what. And Italy actually doesn't have a particularly good apprenticeship system, but it's very interesting to see that Enel, the electricity supply company, is dissatisfied with the quality of training that's coming through the normal vocational training system at the moment, and they have set up, or they signed an agreement with the trade unions, that they will set up their own company-based apprenticeship schemes. So that's one of the 21 examples that I will be producing for the European Trade Union Confederation for discussion in the next few weeks. I think I'll stop there, and I hope it was clear, and thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.